Good morning. We had a bit of controversy back on day one about how long the universe has been here, and there was a bit of controversy also about the role of Eve in these creation stories. Today we are on day 6, and we're going to be reading Genesis chapter 2, verses 18 to 25. And we are going to ask, is Eve really just an assistant to the man? I'll turn the camera around so you can see the text of this scripture. Yahweh God said, "It is not good for the man to live by himself. I want to make him a suitable companion as his helper." From the earth, Yahweh God gave shape to every living thing on the ground and all the different flying birds. To the human he brought them to see what he would name them. And whatever the human called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the birds and animals, but amongst them there was not a suitable companion or helper. So Yahweh God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, during which he removed one of the man's ribs and healed the flesh. He made a woman from the rib and brought her to him. And the man said, "At last, this is one of my own kind, bone from my bone, flesh from my flesh. I call her woman because she was taken from man." Which is why a man leaves his parents and becomes one with his wife. They were both unclothed and not embarrassed. Where is this old story leading us? The old storytellers, helped by their God-given intelligence, were trying to answer some intriguing questions. What is the purpose of all the animals in the world? Why are men and women different? Because they were men, they asked, where did the existence of women fit into the story? In the version of creation we saw in Genesis 1, which they brought home from Babylon, all the living creatures, including finally the humans, appeared on days 5 and 6 towards the end of creation. But here, in this older story, we have preserved the idea that the animals came into a being after the human male, but before the human female. The man was given the job of providing the created animals with names, even though he had no one except God to talk to about them. They were made for the human's convenience, but none of them was suitable as a companion or an assistant. The man's reaction to the woman, when she was brought to him, was first one of relief. "At last," he says, "this is one of my own kind, bone from my bone, flesh from my flesh." Now, I can't imagine why the Bronze Age women put up with this story. It's obvious that all humans are brought to birth by women. To our modern mind, there is no way that a woman is a spare rib, a helper, or an assistant to men. Men and women are in this life together as equal partners. The story in Genesis 1 that came back from Babylon put it in a better way, as we saw on day 4. So God created humans and made them like God, male and female. Like God, male and female. And we're getting better at recognizing the importance of complementarity in roles in human society. We are all of importance and have to earn our status. No longer can we call ourselves superior by right of our birth or our gender. The man's grudging acknowledgement of his kinship with the woman is to our ears not far from an insult. This is one of my own kind, bone from my bone, flesh from my flesh. I call her woman because she's taken from man. This story shows a man falsely placing himself in a superior relationship to a woman. It is often put down to the upper body strength of men being on the whole greater than that of comparable women, but it fails to take into account the amazing ability of women to conceive and nurture a fetus and then have strength and flexibility to bring forth a living child, to nurture it, feed it and bring it up. In this role, it is not the woman who assists the man, but quite the other way round. The passage of Scripture teaches us a very important lesson about how we should approach Scripture. We should approach it with questions. We should argue with it and not fear to tell it when it has got things wrong. And Christians must not be afraid to do so. Jesus taught us to use Scripture intelligently in order to argue for the truth. Jesus used Scripture against itself, for instance, to allow freedom from the strict interpretation of the Sabbath day rest and the use of coins that broke the law about graven images. The person who wrote this passage was seeking a truth, but was hoodwinked by false assumptions about the superiority of his sex. And sadly, it gets worse, as we shall see tomorrow. See you then.